Beginning the current Daf, Mesechet Kidushin Daf Samach Dal. Begin second line down at the top of the Yama. We continue to look at the next Mishnah. Continuing on the theme, really, of this parak of Ha'emer, regarding if someone says, in this case, regarding someone saying that I'm Mekadosh my daughter, what is the status of his nemanis regarding her Kidushin? Shis goes by the Kazakh and the Cheskel, turned to Daf Chaim, Prison doing today's Daf, should be a schus for the Yidden there to Israel and all over the world. Someone discussing today's Daf, Arkadashti as Biti. Someone says, I was Mekadosh my daughter. What is the status of that daughter? The halach of chol bas Yisrael. What does a chol do when he has a marriage to a Jewish woman? The halach of in Kidushin tevis mechiyu b'lavin. The Kidushin will not take effect in a woman that he's only a negative prohibition in getting married to her. The halacha of a guy when he says yeshli banim yeshli ach, which is relevant regarding the halacha of yibum. He says I have sons, I had brothers. That's relevant regarding if you have a chiv of yibum. Do we believe him when he says when they get married, when he's dying? The halacha of mal l'shaker. We have a migui. Well, why should I lie? Is that ke'edim? Does that have halacha status like witnesses, or chazaka? Does it have halacha like a chazaka? Shtiki debanis the halacha when there's two sets of daughters, and he says I was mekadosh my older one, my younger one. What does he mean? The older of the oldest, the younger of the youngest of the oldest. The halacha of machas in the shnaf. Does a person put himself in a situation of doubt? Would you say something that's vague and include that, or would you only want to have something that's definite that gets involved in that halacha? So begin the current daf of Samach Dal, second line down at the top of the Yamad. Says the Mishnah, Kidash says Biti. The father says, I engaged my daughter, or Kidashti v'Kidashtiya. I got her engaged, and I accepted her get, and she's now divorced. And I did that all Kishikitana when she was 8 years old, let's say, when she was a minor. And says the Mishnah, Varekitana. Now, when he's saying this testimony, she is a minor. She's, let's say, 10. Neman says the Mishnah, he's believed to invalidate her from Kahuna as a Gerusha. Now, but let's say Kidashti v'Gerashti Kishritana. Let's say he says he's reminiscing. He's like, I never told the family this, but when Suri was 6 years old, there was a guy I got her engaged to, and then I took a get from her when she was a young girl. Now, when he's saying over the story, he's saying it. She's already 18, and he's saying over the story, but he never said this when she was a minor. And he's not believed. This is whole story that he's saying over, and she's been permitted to a kayin. Like a basul, like a non-gerusha. Now, nishbis, a different case. Let's say she was taken in captivity, which would invalidate her from kahuna because of a suffix zayin, because when they take the people captive, so that they rape them, they mizana with them. But updisiya, he says, I redeemed her. So here, bein shikitana, whether she's a minor, bein shikidil, whether she's an adult, and he's not believed in any of these situations. And the Gemara will explain the reason why here is he not believed even when she's a katana. So the Gemara asks and says this question: Maishna Reisha, what's the difference in the case of the Reisha? Which you told me when you said you Makadosh your daughter and you accepted the get when she was a minor. If you say over the story when she's a minor, you're going to believe him. Maishna Seifa, why by the Seifa, meaning when she's a Gedaila, you're saying over the story when she's an adult, or also the case of the Shvuya, are you not going to believe him? So the Gemara says an interesting svara. Says, I'll tell you why there's a difference. Reisha, when she's still a minor, let's say she's 10 years old, and he's saying over the story from when she was 8 years old. Biyade, right now he has the ability to mekadosh her to someone else, and then they accept the get from him, so that he's believed because of the svar of what's called mal l'shaka. I'm lying? I can do it right now. If I want, I can marry her off and invalidate her. So believe me when I'm saying that this happened 2 years ago when she was 8 years old. Seifa lav biyade. Now when she's 18, he's saying over the story when Suri was 8 years old, I did this whole thing. He doesn't have the ability right now to mekadosh her when she's an adult. And he can't, neither for the case of the Seifa of the Mishnah, he can't give her over to some idol worshippers, not when she's adult, not when she's minor. He doesn't have the rights to put her in captivity. So therefore, those two cases he's not going to be believed because it's not biyadoi. But when regarding the first case when she's a katana, and he's saying it over when she's a katana, then he's believed because he's biyadoi, therefore he has the svara of mal l'shaka, why should I lie? But however, the Gemara asks, V'loi? Really? He's not believed by the case of when she was taken, when he's saying over a story that she was taken captive and that he redeemed her, to say that she's possible from kahuna, but varebe yadai, it is in his ability when she's at least a minor. What does that mean? He can't give her over to captives, some barbarians to give her over as a shvuya. Why is he believed to say that she was taken captive and therefore believe me when I'm saying the story? Says the Gemara, yeah, you know why it's biyadai? Because la'asiyah l'chalal. Interesting what the Gemara is comparing. If someone is born from a relationship that a widow got married to Kohen Gadol, which the Gemara tells later on, the last paragraph of Haydal Mabeis, if anyone from Amoini or Mayavi or Kuti or Nasna or Chalal or Mamzer or Mitzri Adomi have relations with a Kehenis Leviv Israelis, any Jewish woman, he passes her. He makes her invalid. Which this child, this Chalal, if he would have relations with a Jewish woman, the Kapasla Mekahuna, says the Gemara, he would invalidate her from Kahuna. So interesting. The Gemara is saying, you should believe a father when his daughter is a Ketana to say that she was in captivity and he redeemed her, and therefore she's possible for Kahuna. Why? It's not Biyada. He's not allowed to put her into captivity. But he could do the equivalent of the Pesula Le Kahuna. That is Biyada. What's the equivalent? A Chalal. He can marry her off to a Chalal. A Chalal will make her possible to Kahuna. So believe me when I say that she was in captivity and I redeemed her. So why in the case of Seifa, if the Smar is based on Bayada, and that's why I believe him, in the case of the Reisha, when I married her off, because I could do it right now, so here also by captivity, I could also do it. What's it? Not the captivity. I could do the Pasla Kahuna. If I marry her off to Chal. So believe me, Ma'ala Shakir, then I'm saying she was in captivity. Says Gemara Halikash, not difficult. Because it's going to the Stoi ben Yehuda, who he holds, according to the Tana of our Mishnah, that he says later on, Daf Ein Zayin Amud Aleph. B'nais Yisrael, the Jewish women, are mikvah tahara l'chalal. Interesting words, but he says they're a purifying mikvah for those that are chal. Meaning, as Rashi explains, the daughter from a male chal, the case that we're asking, saying, hey, he could go ahead and make his wife pasal for kahuna. It's not true that if you have this daughter from the chal, she's kasha for kahuna. Why? Because his wife purifies the children. And as Rashi explains, since the daughter is kosher, must mean the widow of the chal would also be kosher to kahuna. Why? Because the halacha that the Gemara tells us later on the Ein Haim Aleph, whoever you could marry his daughter, you could marry his widow. So therefore, this father, in the case of our Mishnah, doesn't have it biyadai to invalidate his daughter that's a minor from kahuna. Because even if he married her off to a chalal, we're going like the mandam of the ben Yehuda that says she wouldn't become pasal v'kahuna, because we see he holds the daughter of that relationship would be kosher. So that means his widow, which would be this girl, would also be kosher. A chalal. Now, when that chalal marries a Jewish woman, what happens to that Jewish woman? We were assuming in our question she can be pasal v'kahuna, as we see later on Daf Ein Zayin. On Daf Ein Dal. But we're going like a different man Amar who holds that the child of that union is going to be kosher, and by default, if the child's going to be kosher, she's going to be also. But Rashi says, it is beyond to invalidate her by Kidushin and Gerushin. So that, says Rashi, that's only from Kahuna. That's a Gerusha is going to be possible. But from Truma, he's not going to invalidate her if she's a Bas Koyin. But Nishbis, which is what he wants us to believe for him, it would invalidate her even from Truma. For that, we're not believing you. Saying from Kuna, if she's a Ketana, it'll be the same thing. But regarding, at least at this point in the Gemara, that's Tali and Biyadai. But regarding Truma, we're not believing you. Because it's not Biyadcha to make her apostle from Truma. Says Gemara, it's not true. He can marry her off to a mamzer. So Gemara tells us later on, Daf Samach and Aleph, Kidushin is Taifas B'chiyuv Alavin, and therefore the father has the ability to marry off. Chol could be what? Chol could eat truma. You just can't do that voida, right? Could he eat truma? I'm trying to remember. I think so. He can't do that voida. No, because anyone that's apostle, let's say, Moini Ma'avi, Kuti, Nasan, all these people that have relations with any Jewish woman, they make her apostle. So therefore, without Rabbi Destai, we would say a chal. We're not preventing her from eating. That's what I'm saying, but we would have thought that we would. We would have thought that she becomes apostle to kahuna and zich truma also. We would totally passel her. That's what saying that no, that they're mikveh tahara l'chalalim. For chalalim, she would be if he was just like Amonim Avi, which the Mishnah says later on, the Vayin Dalad, that they're all paslua. That's the chiddush of Reb Destoi. that the kids are not, or else they would be, or else if a chal would get married and they have a children, we would say there would be chalalim. And I don't know if it's a din in truma. I'm trying to remember that, but she would not be able to, because she would be desecrated from the. If she was a bas kohen, that would make her invalid. I'm trying to remember, chol, does he eat truma? I'm trying to remember, but what? And therefore, what, that he cannot be? He's not like Levi, like a Levi or something like.
Why is Rashi bringing it? Because Rashi is asking a very good question.
Right, he's saying.
At the end of the day, whether she's mitzvah for chalulim or not, she still becomes invalid because she became aged and divorced from a chulam.
That's what would happen, but it's not happening now because she's a mikveh tara. If we don't hold a grip this day, we're going to say that his relationship with her is going to create a child that's going to be a chalal. In other words, the daughter won't be able to marry into kahuna, and the amana, this woman, this girl that we're talking about, would also be asur lekahuna, and also that would include the halacha of truma. Doesn't it? Right. Okay. So then that's the same thing. So then for sure, she the halala would not be able to eat, and therefore that would make her invalid. So that's what we're saying, that only because we're holding up the story, the whole that she's a mikveh tar l'chalalan, says that that she's going to be able to, and therefore there's nothing here that he has biyad, the father. We're not going to believe him regarding the shvuya because he doesn't have any ability. The Gemara says, "Ivar biyad l'asila mamzer." It's not true. He can marry off to a mamzer, which, like we said, Kidushin would be typhus. The father's ability to marry off in sin, and there should be possible from truma. So it says the Gemara, no, Rabbi Kiva, and we'll keep on showing you how we can go like some other man da amrim that would say that wouldn't do anything to her, because he says in Kidushin Daf Yomi, since Kidushin cannot take effect by negative prohibition, therefore the father doesn't have the ability to marry off, only for them the Kidushin is typhus, as the Gemara brings Rabbi Kiva later on the parak. So that's not an option that you could have done, because that's not a marriage you could even do. I says the Gemara that, in other words, as Rashi explains, if she's a widow, he could marry her off to a Kohen Gadol, even according to Rabbi Kiva, because even though it's a negative prohibition, Rabbi Kiva agrees that their Kedushin would be typhus, and therefore that would make her Pasal Faguna. Or could Reb Simoi, because it's like in the Braisa, Simoi says, Minakoil, from all Chiv Alavin, Rabbi Kiva makes that the child from such a union would be a mamzer, because he holds Kedushin is not typhus with Chiv Alavin. If it's not, it doesn't take effect, so the child is born in an illegitimate way, would make the child into mamzer, chutz me'amal Kohen Gadol, which is interesting because amal Kohen Gadol is also a negative prohibition for a widow to marry Kohen Gadol. Why is that unique? So the Amar Torah, because the Torah says lo yikach, and then it says v'lo yichal. He shouldn't desecrate the children of his people, which sounds like chalulim oisa, that he's going to make his children as desecrated from kahuna as chalalim, but ve'ein oisa mamzerim, he would not make them into mamzerim. And since the child's not going to be a mamzer, so we see that obviously the Kedushin is going to be typhus by this negative prohibition of kahuna, because if Kedushin would not be typhus, then obviously the child would be a mamzer, as we learned in the Mishnah later on the Samach Vav Mabeis. If there's no Kedushin, the child's going to be a mamzer. So therefore, we see that you have an ability to make her into a pasal for kahuna. How so? Because if I want to, as the father, if the girl is an almana, he can marry her off to a Kohen Gadol, because Kedushin would be typhus, and that would make her into a halala, and make a pasal for the truma. So therefore, believe me when I say she was a captive girl, and that she was redeemed, because that would also make her pasal for kuna. You see, I have biyadi to do this. Which part? Yeah. Right, yes. So yeah, it's going to be a similar question I think I was going to ask. Well, they consider biyadi lakacha, but the question is regarding the divorce. Because why is the Torah saying that he shouldn't make his children halal? If Kidushin is not typhus, you have a bigger problem on your hands than halalas. Why is the Torah saying that if the Kohen Gadol marries a widow, that he's going to make his children as halalim? You have a bigger problem on your hands. They can be mamzerim. No, halalim. We don't say that all throughout the whole Torah when you have a negative prohibition, it's going to make it into mamzeris because Kidushin is not typhus. You're saying halalim. The inference is that it's going to be only halalim. So says the Gemara, no, that's not true. The reason why the Tana of Mishnah did not believe him is because Rabbi Yeshevav, because the Mishnah holds like Rabbi Yeshevav's version of Rabbi Kiva, that he holds the Amar. He had said the following phrase. He says, he says, let's come and scream ala Kiva ben Yosef on Rabbi Kiva, who is increasing psulim invalid people amongst the Jewish people. Why? Because he said, Kol she'en lebi b'Yisrael, any situation, any Jewish man who his relations are not permitted with the woman that he's having relations with, Havla, the child that's born from that bia, is a mamzer. That's the wording that he said. So you see that he holds that every bia psula, including a moleka and gadol, would make into mamzer because he says every single bia that's aser, the child's a mamzer. So you can't ask from me again. Our Mishnah doesn't have any situation that we're going to believe you that you married her off, because even the moleka and gadol, you can't marry her off because the child's going to be a mamzer. Obviously, Kidushin not teifus. Says Gemara, Hanich Rabbi Sheva. Well, that makes sense according to Rabbi Sheva, depending how we translate what Rabbi Sheva was saying. If he's coming to say his own pshat, meaning he wasn't coming to exclude from Semai, to just agree what he said regarding Chivi, Lavin of Kahuna, but rather it was a klal that he was saying that every bia that's in sin, the child's going to be a mamzer according to Rabbi Kiva, and there he was screaming against Rabbi Kiva, how could you say such a thing? But he held his own thing that he was just saying blanket for everything. So Shabbat, that makes sense. You could explain to Mishnah that there's no Kidushin of sin that's going to be a Kidushin. Therefore, the father does not have the ability to marry over his daughter to anyone that's going to make her a Chalala through the Bia. So, okay, you're right. There's not, and then our Mishnah would make sense. We're not going to believe him because there's no Biyah at all that he has. But it's a finer point. But the Gemara is saying, if Rabbi Sheva was not just saying his own teaching, he was just coming to exclude from the teaching of Samai that we mentioned just before. He was only coming to add on the Chiv Lavin of Kahuna. But let's say by Mitzri and Adaimi within the first 3 generations, which are only Chiva Asay, just a negative, it's not even a negative prohibition, it's just a positive commandment. He would agree that Kedushin would be typhus. So I have a question. The father does have the ability to marry off his daughter to those that's only positive commandment not to marry them, and that they would be mechalah from Truma and from Kuna, as the Gemara tells later on the Ayin Dalmud Beis, by Mitzri and Adaimi. And within the first 3 generations that they were Megayer, you're not allowed to marry them, and that's only a positive commandment, very weak. But Al Kapan would make her into Chalala, and we don't see that anyone says Rabbi Kiva would hold that it's going to be a mamzer, but by a Chive Lavin. So maybe there in those situations, I have a question. Why doesn't the Mishnah believe him when he says Nishbis? If the father does have a biyadai, how does that biyadai to marry off to a chivaseh? And that would make her into a chalala, and he could do such a thing because Kidushin is typhus, because that would not make the child a mamzer, just chivaseh. That's one question. Moreover, Amar Vashi says, "V'tizbera, do you really think the answer we gave before is an appropriate answer of this whole svar biyadai? The Reisha, the beginning of the mission, that you tell me that we believe him to invalidate his daughter from Kuna. Because it's biyadai? What do you mean? Although it's within his ability to, and this I think is answering your question before. What do you mean biyad lekacha? Rashi explains, it's biyadai to accept the kedushin from a man that's coming to be mekadesha. And you were asking, he says, how could he make another person? So Rashi explains in the way, biyadai to mekabel the kedushin from someone else. At least that's biyadai. But biyad legarsha, you think it's in his ability to divorce her? The question is, why don't you say the same thing also when the guy's al kabam? That's the way the Gemara is saying it. That's not biyadai to go ahead and divorce her. But moreover, ilo mahai, that if let's say that this person would say dolenicha begava, which is really the other question, that he doesn't want to be mekadesha. Mimatzim mekadesh nehale bal karchei. How does it be yadai? He can't force someone else to get engaged to his daughter. Where's the biyadai over here? So the Gemara falls off in this whole svar biyadai because we don't have biyadai to believe in the case of the Reisha or biyadai that he could get her engaged and get a divorce so that she's a grusha and then she's pasal kuna. So Rav Ashi says a different pshat. Why should I lie? I'm lying about this. Rabbi, that's what Rashi had said before. He said that the reason why I'm believing him is because it was like, and I could do it right now. So believe me what I'm saying. No, you can't. You can't force someone else to be mekadesha. You can't force him to divorce. So why should we believe you? Maybe Taka are lying. So rather, Rabbi Asha has a different shot. It says Reish Rachmana Hemnei. But regarding the opening halach of our Mishnah, it's exegesis kasa really. It's that Torah believes him. Why does Torah believe him? Krapuna. When he says Amarav Minayin la'avshenem unless as beat him in the Torah. From where do we know that the father is believed to make his daughter forbidden biblically? onto getting married to anyone else. Shlomo says, opposing the bottom, as beating the my daughter I gave to this man. Now, how do you translate this pasuk? So the Gemara says like this: before the last word, if you just say leish to a man, astra, it makes it forbidden to everyone because we don't know to whom. When the Torah then says leish hazeh to this man, hatira, then they permitted him, permitted her to this man. Now says the Gemara, b'nisuin him nirach malab. It's only regarding marriage that the Torah believed the father, if she's a naira or a katana, not by geras, because the pasuk is not talking about it's only to my naira, and therefore we don't believe him by the middle case of the Mishnah when she's already an adult, because it's only regarding when she's a minor, and moreover regarding the seifa b'shvuya lo'hemne, regarding which captivity we don't believe him at all, because the Torah never give you the manas regarding that. So really that's what the Mishnah ended up saying. There's three cases. When he says I was makadosh and megarish my daughter when she was a minor, or we're saying it over when she's an adult, or we're going to captivity. Regarding the first case, we say we believe him. The Torah says, "As beaten sat l'shazeh." Torah gives him the manas. Regarding the middle case, or when she's already an adult, Torah didn't give you the manas over there. You can't say what you did when she was a minor. Regarding the sefer, shvuyi, even if she's a minor, we don't believe you because it has nothing to do with that. So regarding his beaten sat l'shazeh, that Torah gives him the manas, and therefore that explains the halacha of our Mishnah. The halacha of the next Mishnah regarding again the manas, regarding believing someone, regarding this topic of marriage. So, but in a different context. If someone says at the time when he's dying, he says, Yeshli banim. He says that I have children, let's say from a previous marriage, and his wife is not going to have to do yibum. Of course, he has children. He has someone that's keeping his legacy alive. Then when he's believed that his wife could just go on and marry someone else. Let's say he says, Yeshli achem. Let's say he says, by the way, I have brothers. She never knew about this long-lost brother who lives somewhere in Zimbabwe. And she has to do yibum. Up until now, she thought she's not going to do yibum. She thought he was the only child. And she could go marry someone else. So there ain't a neman. There he's not believed. So the Gemara is going to have a discussion about this. Says the Gemara, Alma, we see one thing. What do we see? We see that neman lahater. We see seemingly from what the Mishnah says that when he says he has children, which permits her to get married to someone else, that is believed. But he's not believed to make her forbidden now. Say, by the way, I have brothers. Now I can't just marry whoever I want to. That is not believed. Neman lahater, but not neman lesser. Says, come on, name must like Rabbi Nosson. Let's say our Mishnah is not like Rabbi Nosson. Why? Because the time we learn the Brisa. B'shas Kidushin. If let's say when the person is getting engaged, Amar, he says, I want you to know this is not my first marriage with you. Yeshli banim. I have other sons. Now Rashi says, why is he telling her this? So that she's not worried from Yibam. And she'll be willing to get married to him. He says, don't worry, for my first marriage, I have children. You're not going to get stuck with my crazy brother. Now, however, Rashi says, very importantly, when he gave her the ring, when he gave the Kidushin, he didn't say al manas. He didn't say on condition. He just let her know, by the way, I want you to know I already have sons. Now, B'shas Misa Amar in Liban. However, when he's dying, he confesses and he says, I don't have any sons. Which means obviously she's going to have to do Yibam. What? No, the same woman that he got married to. When he was getting engaged, he let her know that he has sons that live out in somewhere in the other country, whatever. And when he's dying, he says, by the way, FYI, it's not true. I don't have any sons. Which obviously changes everything for her. She's going to have to do Yibum or Chalitza or whatever with this crazy brother, and she's stuck until she gets out of that. Or let's say, B'shas Kidushin Amar, when he was getting engaged, he said, In la'achim. He says, don't worry, I don't have any brothers. You don't have to be worried from Yibum. Because I have no brothers that you can be stuck with. Just me, somebody says, by the way, yesh la'achim, I do have some crazy brother living out somewhere, whatever. So says the first Tana, Nem lahater, he's believed to permit, ve'ein nem lesser divi Rebbe. He's not believed to make forbidden. In other words, he's believed what he said when he was getting engaged, which permits her. He's not believed what he said when he was dying to make her forbidden. That's what Rebbe holds. What? Even on his deathbed, yeah, because really that's the halacha of our Mishnah. Seemingly our Mishnah is like Rebbe, who says nem lahata ve'ein nem lesser. What? He had no parents to ask. Oh, you mean that what to be chayshish? Right. That yeah. Right. Now Reb Nosson, he says no, af nema lesser. It's not true. He's even believed to make her forbidden. Meaning, what he says on his deathbed, he has brothers or he doesn't have sons. he is believed. Seemingly, our Mishnah is not like him, because our Mishnah is saying that you only neman when you say yeshli banim, you're not neman when you say yeshli achim. Amar Rabbi says, no, it's not true. Our Mishnah could be like Reb Nassan. Why is that? Because Shani Hasam, even the Bryce is different. Why? He even the B'shas Misa Kahader Bey, since when he was dying, he was retracting from his earlier words he said when they got engaged. Ema Kushta Kama. I could say maybe saying the truth, meaning he doesn't want to die with this sin of knowing that he lied when he was getting engaged. So therefore, could be he's saying the truth, and could be that Rabbi Nassan says we believe him. But our Mishnah, where when they were getting engaged, he didn't say, I don't have brothers. So when he's saying now, I do have brothers, maybe we shouldn't believe him. Maybe he's just trying to bother and to pain his wife by saying this joke, I don't know, when he's dying.
We have no other source in Gemara where it speaks about the Naamanus.
We generally believe someone.
Right.
Question is over here in this situation, would we say that, well, Shaila is, what does it mean? Neman lahat or neman la'asar. We have chazakas. That's really what the sugi is about, as we'll see on Naman base. So you want to come and remove from the chazaka. Why should we believe you? How do we know what you're saying is true? That's really what relates to halacha of our Mishnah, of the previous Mishnah. This how do we know what you're saying is true? The father is believed to say regarding his daughter. We'll see later on. We've seen previously that to say my son's bar mitzvah, my daughter's bar. We don't know if what you're saying is true. How do we know? How do we believe you? You're one person. We need edus. So therefore, to obligate this wife in halach of yibum, how do we know what you're saying is true? You're not aid. You're not two edim. Right, whatever it is. But the point is, it's just like. But the Gemara says interesting. The Gemara falls off it right away. But the Gemara is saying maybe when he said a lie when he got engaged, maybe he wants to confess now. Maybe he's saying the truth. But Stamasa, who said we should believe you? And therefore, that's why maybe Rav Nassan could be like the Tana of Mishnah. The Gemara doesn't like this. Amalei Bai says, what do you mean? Isn't it a kol sheken? Hashta if mahasam in the case of the Brisa, the kamore leili dibure, he's weakening the words that he said when he got engaged. Amid kushta kama, still you want to say Rav Nassan that maybe still saying the truth, which you're going to say af neman lesser, that he can make her forbidden now. So in the case of Mishnah where he didn't ever say anything not like that, like Koshin, isn't Koshin that you should believe him, that it should make her usher the way Reb Nassan says? The Rabbi doesn't like that. So why shouldn't we believe him? If we believe him even when he's going against what he originally said, why shouldn't we believe him right now? So Elam Abai, rather Abai says a different way to resolve the question. It says, Masnitin, our Mishnah is Deloy Muchsiklan. We never had an assumption regarding this person at the time that he's dying. We never assumed ba'achi, we never assumed that he had brothers. And we didn't have any assumption that he had any sons. Now, that means to say that this woman has a chazaka, that she's not zakuk to Yibum, because we never knew of any brothers. Oh, so therefore, we say like this. Since we're not have any presumption regarding any children or any brothers, if if he says I have sons, now that is going on the first chazaka, that it's strengthening the original chazaka. The original chazaka was two variables. The two variables were we don't know if him having any sons, we don't have any brothers. But in that state, no brothers, the chazaka is no yibum. So when he says, I have sons, well, that's reaffirming, even though it's not the variable, but it's reaffirming the original chazaka that she's going to be part of him yibum. Oh, so therefore Neman, he's believed, and the Kidushin that is, if a brother subsequently does come and say, I'm a brother of the dead person, doesn't make a difference, because his dibur that he said he has sons too already was reaffirmed with that original chazaka, and she's not going to have to do yibum, even though there is a brother. Now, but if he says, Yeshli Achim, I have brothers, and I don't have sons, in an Eman, there is not believed. Why? Lav kol kamine, he has no rights to asalah kul to make it forbidden everyone else, because it's excluding, it's extracting from the original chazaka, which she was permitted. So now it's already, we understand this a little bit better. There's nothing about neman lo isul hatira. It's just, are you working with the original chazaka or not? Original chazaka was her being permitted. You say yeshli banim, that's working along with the chazaka. You say yeshli achim, that's working against the chazaka, and therefore that's not going to. We're not going to believe him over there. That's the case of the Mishnah. In contrast, Braisa, where Reb Nassan said that we're going to believe him, even to make her forbidden, that's the following case as we continue to Midbeis. The Muchziglon Ba'achi, we had a chazaka there that there was brothers, and we didn't have a chazaka that he had sons. Now Rashi explains, not that there was witnesses regarding it, it was just a general chazaka. That's what we heard before he got engaged, that, we knew he had a brother somewhere, but we didn't know of him having any children. The meaning that we say, when he says by Kidushin, that I have sons or I don't have brothers, if this is a fine point of the cheshbon, if he wouldn't retract at the time of his death, we would have believed him. Why? Because mal l'shaker. Why should I be lying? As the Gemara explains. Maika amar. In other words, for what are you believing him with these words that he's saying? If it's lemiftada miyavam, if it's to exempt her from yibum, when this again, what he's saying when he's getting engaged, he's saying that I have sons, right? If he's saying I have sons, means say, don't worry, you won't have to have a problem with yibum. Or I don't have any brothers, don't worry, you don't have to have a problem with yibum. We would have believed him what he said when he got engaged, even though we actually had a chazaka that he did have brothers and that he didn't have sons. Meaning, when he's getting engaged, he says the opposite of what the original chazaka was. We would have believed him. Why would we have believed him? Because why should I lie? Why should you lie? Of course you're lying. You're lying because you wanted to get married to you, because she shouldn't be afraid of Ibam. Nech. Matzam, he could say, Patan nalach begita. Don't worry. I'll let you off the hook. I'll divorce you when I'm still alive, right before I die. So I didn't have to tell you that I don't have brothers or that I have children. Because about the problem, I could get you out a different way. Oh, so when he retracts, when he's dying, that's the machlekes of the Braisa. What's the machlekes? Rebbe holds mali l'shaker. The svara of why should I lie at the time of Kidushin is ki edim damu, has the halachic status of testimony, as if witnesses came and said this idea. But also edim akri chazaka. So that means to say these quote unquote witnesses, which is him during when he gets engaged, it uproots the original chazaka. Obviously, edim are stronger than the chazaka. So the chazaka that we had originally established, that he had brothers without children, and now this woman has a chazaka that she's not zakuk for yibum, because his testimony is uprooting that. Now when at the time of death, he's coming to exclude from the new chazaka, that he has no rights to do. Because he's quote unquote created edim at the time of Kidushin. From Nassan Savayos, no. Mal l'shaker, this, what we believe him at the time of Kidushin, like why should I lie, which we taka believe him because of that, is ki chazak dami. Is only like a chazaka. Lo yas a chazaka, you cannot have the chazaka of mal l'shaker come along v'akr chazaka and uproot the first chazaka, which we had assumed by her before Kidushin, legamri, totally, to make this woman in the chazaka that she's not zakuk for yibum, to invalidate his words, what he's saying at the time of death. And if we do believe him, to make her usher like the original chazaka before they got married, that we presume they were brothers and they were not sons. So therefore, she will be usher. Now, however, if he would not be backing out at the time of his death, she would be permitted, because although the chazaka does not come along and totally uproot the first chazaka, it would at least weaken it. And as long as he does not refute his first words, he would be believed. Why? So Rashi says, why would he sin if he has no personal gain? And if he really would have a brother, he would have retracted at the time of death. And therefore, we see like a baya that you could even explain the halacha of our Mishnah, even like Reb Nassan, because they're talking about different cases, different original chazakas, and the case of the Bryce is a very interesting case. But again, it was like 3 steps. There was original chazaka that she has an obligation of yibum. Then at the time when he was getting married, he said something that we believe him that she's not going to have obligation of Yibum, because why should I lie? Well, because I'm afraid that she's going to have to do Yibum. Don't worry, I'll divorce her before I get. And then when he's dying, he's retracting from that. The question is, could he retract from that or not? That all depends how you qualify what he said when they got married. That mal l'shaker, is that like an edus? We believe him like witnesses because, well, why should he lie? We give him such a strong namanas. Then when you're dying, you don't have we can't believe you to uproot mal l'shaker, edus, or you say that no, when we believed him, it was like a chazaka, and therefore when he's dying, therefore if it's chazaka, it does not uproot the original chazaka. So when he's dying, he's not uprooting a chazaka because he could say, I'm like the first chazaka. Interesting Gemara. Obviously, a lot of lumdis that would go into this, but that's the basic understanding of what's the machlekes Reb Nosson and Rabbi. And therefore, the Reb Nosson could be the Tan of a Mishnah, because in the case of our Mishnah, it was a very different case where he's not going against the chazaka. If anything, he's working with the chazaka, as we explained, and therefore that he would believe. And but the case of Yeshli Achim, he's going against the chazaka, and therefore he would not believe him. So again, it's all dependent on the svaris and the halachas and the sugis of chazaka. Now look at the next Mishnah, continue on this theme regarding believing the father, regarding the Kidushin of his daughter. So Mekadesh is bitei stam. If someone accepted Kidushin for one of his daughters, but he didn't specify which one, so someone said, he said to a guy, my daughter's engaged to you, and he didn't say which one. Says the Mishnah, in a ba'igris b'chlal. So his daughters that are over 12 and a half are not included, and they're permitted to marry anyone else, and they would not require a get from this man, because they're not in the possession of the father to get them engaged. Next case says the Mishnah, if someone has two sets of daughters from two wives, meaning he married the second one after the first one died. He says, says, I was in shul today, I saw a nice strapping young man, masmid learning, I betrothed my oldest daughter. Now, any day I don't know, is it the older one of the oldest, meaning from the first set, or the older of the younger one of the second set, or the youngest of the older set, because she because she's older than the older of the younger set. So it says the Mishnah, kul nasuras, they're all going to be forbidden. Now the assumption is, even if there's 100 daughters, each one is called the Gedaila, in contrast to the baby of the family, the Katana. The Gemara is going to ask, well, now why didn't you mention regarding the suffix, the middle one of the two daughters, which is the Gedailis regarding the Katanas of them all? Why didn't you mention that? So the Gemara is going to address that. But at this point, it sounds like all of them are going to be Asr, except for the youngest of the younger pair. Well, she's obviously not the Gedaila in any way, in any capacity, and therefore she's going to be the only one that's not going to be included. He disagrees. He says no. He says kula mutavis. They're all permitted. Why? Because a person would not put himself in the situation of to say something that would be a shaila to the chachamim. So they're all permitted, except for the older of the oldest pair. When he says Gedaila, he means the Gedaila should be Gedailas. Next case, which is basically the same idea, and the Gemara is going to ask, why do you have to say both? Kedashtes bita katana says, I betrothed my younger daughter. Now, any day I don't know if Katana Shabbat is the younger of the younger pair, or Katana Shabbat or the younger of the older pair, or maybe the older of the younger pair, Shikatana Katana Shabbat, which is the younger of the youngest of the older pair. Okay, cool, Nasur. So all going to be forbidden. Except for the older of the oldest, which obviously is not in Katana in any capacity. He says, no, kul mataris, all permitted, except the youngest of the youngest. Okay, but the Gemara makes a diuk that we had said in the Mishnah that when you said my daughter's engaged, you said that okay, that everyone is going to have a suffix, but the boy grace are not included. But says the Gemara Katanis Bachlal, but that means to say that even if let's say there's two minor daughters, he has one daughter that was 10, one that was 8. That you're not sure which one. Are you going to tell me that okay, fine, that then the suffix will be on both those girls? But that's what's called Kidushin. That's not Mr. and Labia. It's an engagement that can never lead to intimacy because each one is a suffix if it's the wife, or it could be Achaisi, it could be the wife's sister. And even so, you're telling me that it's going to be included in a suffix Kidushin, and both of them would require a get. Okay, Shema Minah. So what you see from our Mishnah is Kidushin Shem Zirin Lebiyav Kidushin, which we already discussed elsewhere, where it seems to be machlokes. The Kidushin that you cannot lead to Bia is going to be a Kidushin. Because you only tell me the Baiger is not included. Obviously, the minor daughters would be. So there's only one Baigeris, one 15-year-old daughter, and one Ketana, one 10-year-old daughter. Oh, since, like we explained in the Mishnah, that the Baigeris, there's no Kedushin, so there's no suffix. So obviously, that man, who he was Makadosh to in Shul, is going to be permitted to that one Ketana. Says the Gemara, how could you say that? But for Baigeris Ketani, the word in the Mishnah is in plural, that we said the Baigeris are not included. His 18-year-old daughter and his 15-year-old daughter and his 13-year-old daughter, they're not included. Now that sounds like there's many of them. So the inference would be that the parallel would be for the ketanas that they're also plural, that there's also more than one minor. But then we're back to the question. It sounds like the Kedushin would be on all of them. Says, well, no, my Baigeris, what's the plural of Baigeris? That's Baigeris to Alma. When we're saying we say certain things in plural, we mean every single man that's Makadosh, his daughters, without specifying, the Baigeris are not included. But the Ketanis would be included. But we're only talking about all these men. We're saying, and those, their daughters, he has an 8-year-old daughter, and he has a 6-year-old daughter, and he has a 25-year-old daughter. So that's what we're saying. There's only one Baigeris, but we're saying in the plural, we're talking about all the men in the world. Says Rashi, why do you have to answer that that there's only a Gedol and Ketana? Truth is that even if there would be many Baigeris, that it wouldn't make a difference because they're not included at all anyways, because it's only by Ketana there's Kedushin. Says Rashi, the reason why we're saying that there was only one Baigeris and one Ketana is because we're saying that the inference is, we're inferring that the Ketana is similar to the case of Baigeris. If there's one Baigeris, then there's one Ketana. If there's many Baigeris, we're thinking many Ketanas. So we're saying, no, there's one Baigeris, and Baigeris is Baigeris to Alma, and there's one Ketana. So the Gemara says, if that's the case, well then Pshita, since there's only one adult daughter and one minor daughter, so, and we're saying the adult daughter is not engaged, and the Ketana is engaged, obviously, Baigeris Ma'ava Detayu. What does the Baigeris have any purpose over here that a father by his daughter that's a Baigeris? As Rashi explains the Gemara's question, if you're going to say that there's many Ketanas, so yeah, there would be something that the Mishnah would be teaching us for its inference, to say, yes, the Baigeris are not included, but the Ketanas would be. Oh, but to tell us the Kedushin that's not Mr. Nabi would be Kedushin. But now, so there's no need, is not for the halacha Baigeris, there's no need she's not part of it because he has no rights on his daughter. And there's no need for the inference of the Ketanas because only one Ketana. What are we talking about over here? There is a Chiddush in the halacha Baigeris itself, that they're not included. Because we're talking about the Shavisi Shlich. We're talking about where his 18-year-old daughter made him a Shliach to say, Tati, whoever you want to get me engaged to, get me engaged to. What would you say, Kimikabel Kedushin, when he's accepting the Kedushin? Maybe Adaita Didaka Makabel. Maybe he was receiving it for her and she's also in the Suffolk. And therefore it would be Kedushin that's not Mr. in Labia, and therefore maybe the Ketana would not be engaged. That's what Mishnah is teaching us. No, Leishavik Inish. A man would not leave Midi de Isle Hanomine, something that he gets benefit from, because the kesef kedushin that he would get from his 10-year-old daughter, which is the ketana, would go to him, and he wouldn't leave Deva of Midi Lese Hanomine and do something that he wouldn't get personal benefit. Yes, he's happy his 8-year-old daughter is getting married, but he wouldn't be getting the money from it. And if we're not assuming that he would do it for her, even though he made him a shliach, and that's the chiddush of the Mishnah, that the Baiger is not going to be included. But says the Gemara, wait a second, that's not really such a good answer. Mila Eskinan. Aren't we talking about, in other words, can we not understand from the word in the Mishnah that even the Amrle Kiddush Shayilach, that even if his 18-year-old daughter says, Tati, don't worry, the ring I get is yours. And still the Mishnah is teaching us that the Baigeris is not included. But why not? There he's getting Hana, just like from the Ketana, because he's getting the ring. Says no, even so, a person would not leave the mitzvah of his minor daughter, the Ramyale, which that's imposed upon him to marry her off, and it's a mitzvah, as the Torah says in Yirmi Yachavtes, and your daughters you should give over to men, which that right, that obligation is only when they're a minor, which they're in his jurisdiction, and he's not going to leave that and do a mitzvah that's not imposed upon him. He's just a regular shliach, and she has her own intelligence to marry herself off. Yet he's going to do his daughter a favor and marry her off, but therefore the chiddush of the Mishnah is that we're not going to suspect that is referring to his Baigeris, and that's the Chiddush, but not Tim for anything regarding Ketanas, because maybe there's only one Ketana, because Kedushin should not Mr. Labi, it would not be a Kedushin. The next halach of the Mishnah said, Mishishli Shtiki Debanis. We said someone has two sets of daughters, and we had two cases, one about the older one. We said we're not sure what older. And when we said the Ketana, we weren't sure what it means, the younger one. So the Gemara explains, V'tzricha, why was it necessary to have this machlokes, which we said would we consider situations of doubt or not, to have the disagreement regarding when the Kedashtis Bita Gedoyla, and we also had it by Kedashtis Bita Ketana, which was seemingly the same machlokes. Why do you have to say it by both of these cases? It says, I'll tell you why. Kadiyash min kamaisa had we only said the first case regarding the Gedoyla, Bahach, Kamer Meir, be only, and with there, does Meir say they're all included in the suffix, because the Kivin the Ikazuchimina, since there's any younger daughter, Lahach Gedoyla Karila. So the one above her, we'll call her the older daughter. As Rashi explains, it's a shvach for a person to call his daughter my big girl if there's a younger one. So therefore, when he says my big girl, he means just not the youngest, not the baby. That 18-year-old, they still call her the baby. But Avabaha, when the second case of saying my younger daughter, the Ketana, I would say maybe Gisra B'yisi, because the Ketana, Lahach Ketana the Kula Karala. He would only call it the one that's the youngest of them all, because if he could call his daughter my big girl, he's not going to call her my baby girl. That's only the baby that he's going to call the Ketana. So maybe he would agree. And same thing in reverse. We only said the Machlid regarding the Ketana. Maybe only over there Rabbi was talking about. But the case of the Gedolei, I would say that yes, you say your big girl could have meant all the girls, not just the oldest. So you have to say the Machlid is by both of them. But now the Gemara asks a fundamental question. Lememra, which is really goes to the core of the machlokes in our Mishnah. Remember, is that to say that Remeir Savar, that Remeir held machas in the shnaf shel esvek, a person would put himself in the situation of doubt, meaning he would say something that would be vague and ambiguous, and he would include that in that possible halacha where he's saying Gedolah maybe means all of them, which we have no understanding of. And Rabbi Yisrael said, "Loy machas in the shel esvek," and that Rabbi Yisrael, the person would not put himself in the situation of doubt. But we actually learned a Mishnah elsewhere that says the exact opposite. That now we learn the Mishnah Masechta in the Dharm that says, "Hanoider Ara Pesach." Someone takes a neder that I'm not going to have any benefit for you from you until Pesach. So the halacha is asat shegia. He's going to be forbidden until it reaches Pesach. But when it's the first night, the Seder night, he's already permitted. Now, if he says at sheyehei Pesach, not at Pesach, he says at sheyehei Pesach until it will be Pesach, then asat sheyetze. Then he's forbidden until Pesach leaves. Why? Rashi explains, since he said extra terminology, what's at sheyehei? Just say at Pesach. What's at sheyehei Pesach? The extra word sheyehei is coming to include, to say that as long as it's Pesach, I'm still going to be forbidden. Okay, but the main thing we want is the next case. Ad Pnei Pesach, if he says up until the face, until the face of Pesach, we have machlekes. Meir, he says, Asa Ad She'egia. You're forbidden only up until it reaches Pesach. When it reaches Pesach, there's no more Pnei Pesach. Now, even though every single day of Pesach is a Pnei, is a face, comes before the next day of Pesach, yeah, but a person would not put himself in a situation of doubt that he should have to ask which one it is. When he says Pnei, is from the first of them all, which is the Pnei of them all, which is before the first day of Pesach. That's how Remeir holds. Yosef, he says, no, Achayetze, until Pesach is over, because every single day is the Pnei Lechavei, right? And you don't know which one it is. And even the last day is the beginning is Pnei for the end of the day. And therefore, it can be forbidden throughout the whole Pesach. But we see the exact opposite. We see the Rabbi Yisrael is saying you would put yourself in a situation of doubt in your ambiguous words. Remeir holds not. Exact opposite of the halacha of a Mishnah. So Amram Chanina Bar Avdimi Amrav. He says, you're right, Machlef Hashita. You have to switch around the attribution of the opinions of the Mishnah Masechta and the Darim to match that of our Mishnah. Remeir holds that you would be Machas L'Sveika, and Rabbi Yisrael holds that you would not be. And says the Gemara of Tanya, and we have a brayso that says, like what we're saying, that you see exactly like we're saying in our Mishnah, not like you say in Mishnah Masechta and the Darim, because the brayso says, this is the rule. Anything that has a set time, meaning the days extend a set time like Pesach and Yom Tov, you know exactly how long it is, which we're coming to exclude, let's say, the harvest season, let's say. If a person says Ad Pnei or even Ad Sheyehei, the harvest season, he's only going to be forbidden up until it reaches the harvest season, because since how long it extends is not a set time, because some people are quick to do the harvest, some people are more delayed. So this guy obviously only had in mind for the beginning, for when they're going to start the harvest, no matter what the wording that you say. Because only when you have a set time. Now, let's say something that has a set time. You say Ad Pnei. So what's the halacha? Remeir says Ad Sheyetze, until it finishes. So you see, like the version of our Mishnah, for the same halacha that we bring in Mishnah Masechta and the Darim, really, that Remeir is the one that holds Yunachas L'Sveika, and therefore you can be forbidden up until the end of that set time, let's say the Pesach. Basically, it says no Achigi until it reaches. So again, you see the Brisa supports our Mishnah's version. You have to switch around the Mishnah Dharm. Now, Abaye qualifies, says Machlekes b'shtei kiti banis. Our Mishnah was specifically by two sets of daughters. That's where you could say that the entire first set, a person would actually call that a gedayla regarding any one of his daughters, in contrast to the second set. And the whole second set, a person would call a katana in regards to the first set. That's where we're saying this halacha of our Mishnah of the kat achas. But if let's say he had only one pair of daughters, meaning he only had children from one wife, everyone would agree, gedayla mamish, katana mamish. If you say gedayla, you mean the oldest girl. Say katana, you mean the youngest girl. And the middle children, you would call by their name. My daughter, this, Sarala, Chayila, whatever, you wouldn't call her not gedayla, not katana. That's how Abai explains in our Mishnah. Although Ramey was saying, oh, machas not lasveika, and maybe all the older girls are old gedayla, katana. That's only because it's two different sets. You could call the whole older set gedayla, you could call all the younger one katana. But if not for that, if it's one set of wives, then it's only going to be gedayla and katana. However, he says, if that's the case, I have the following question for you. As you continue to have Samachim and Aleph, the middle daughter in the second pair, meaning from the second wife, Tishdidi should be permitted. What's the question? Rashi explains, it's going on the Reisha. You told me that you have a suffix regarding the entire second set. When you said Gedoyla, besides the youngest of the youngest. But the middle one, regarding whom are you calling her a Gedoyla? If not regarding the katana of that set. So you see, even in the same set, they do disagree. So what we're talking about there is She'ein Sham. Actually, by the second set, you don't have any middle daughter. There's Ele Gedoyla Katana. There's only an older and the younger. Therefore, you could say that they're all forbidden. But you're right, if there had been a middle child over there, the Mishnah would have said, except from the Katanois, Shebekatanois. And we wouldn't have said, because actually the middle daughters would also be permitted because they're not gedayla, because they're in the same pair. The same pair, you wouldn't call her a gedayla. The Gemara says, it's actually logical what we're saying, that there's no middle child in the second set of children. Because it would be true that there was a middle child. And we want to say that they're all forbidden. So then Lasanye, it should have been mentioned regarding when the Mishnah is saying, and ain't you there, I don't know. It should have said like this. I don't know if it's Gedolah Shabbat if it's Gedolah Shabbat or Emtsoyish Shabbat. That doesn't say. It should have said, oh, okay, cool Nasuras. And the fact that the Mishnah doesn't tell us to let us know that it's going to be Asur, obviously that the Tana Mishnah holds that it's not going to be Asur. And when we say Kul Nasuras is when there's no middle child. However, the Gemara doesn't like that proof. The Gemara says, according to your reason that you're saying, that if he held that the middle ones would be Asur, it should have said it, then Emtsoy Shebekat Rishayna. What do you do with the middle children of the first set? The Vadi Sveika Vasirle, that's for sure included in the doubt, and is going to be forbidden if they have middle children, because you agree that the entire first set of children, regarding the second set of children, are called Gedaila, and they would be Asur. Miktanila, does it say it? It should have said in the Reisha, so that you should infer that they'd be forbidden, and you're not going to entertain to say that, that they're permitted, because when we said Kul Nasur is only when there's no Mitzayis, so obviously you don't have a Raya, because you didn't say the Mitzayis of the first set also. So which the Gemara rejects that question and says, no. Hachihashta, can you compare the two sets? Regarding the first set, I didn't have to specify, because even though the Mishnah is, even if the Mishnah would be talking about that there's only two for every set, I would never entertain to say that if there would have been a middle child in the first set, that I wouldn't have said Kul Nasuris. Why? Because Hasam Tana Katana Didali Asura. That I already told you that the youngest one of the first set is forbidden. I call her a Gedoyla regarding the second set. So obviously, Bohadin, Lahach, for sure, Kolshkin, the middle child of the older, the Kashishan that's older than the youngest of the older, obviously would be forbidden. In contrast, Hachol be here, but regarding the second set, if you're not going to say it, which we didn't say it, you could say that the Mishnah holds if there's only that it's only talking about Gedoyla Gitana, because if there was a middle child, we would not call her a Gedoyla. Because Im Isa de Ika, if it's true that there was a middle child, and on all of them we're saying is asuras, then Nisanya, you should have said explicitly and let us know that even she's going to be forbidden, that we should not make a mistake to explain that there's no middle child. Obviously, it is logical, like Abaye is saying, that must mean that there is no middle child, because actually the middle child would not be asur in regards to the youngest of the youngest, and that's what we're only saying because there is no middle child. Now the Gemara, however, asks on Abaye, Amali Rav Huna Berid Bishul Rabbi says, what do you do with Ha Pesach? The case of Pesach, the chikat achas dami. Pesach is like one set upligi, because like Rashi explains that there is an opinion that says that the middle days are also called Panei because there are later ones than it too. So it's like one set, and still we say that lemachas l'sveika, or we say that you are machas l'sveika. You see the machlik is even in regarding one set. So Amalei says no, that's nothing to do with this concept. Hasam b'lishna the amakim. There the machlik is only regarding the terminology that people use, a very different machlekes. Marsav, one opinion holds ad Pnei Pesach. What does it mean ad Pnei Pesach? It means ad Kamet Pesach until before Pesach. Marsav, the other opinion holds, the one that says it's Aser, not because that he holds that anything that's something later in it, we're calling it Pnei. No, which was the Gemara's question. Rather because he understands in the wording of people, it just means ad Mefane Pesach. The word Pnei could be used as a lashon of panoi, of clearing it out, of clearance until it's done. That was the machlekes, never has no relevancy, and therefore Abaye still stands correct that the whole machlekes is only regarding two sets, but one set you wouldn't say one is gedayla than the other, it would only be the gedayla should be gedaylas, and therefore actually if the second set has a middle child, she actually would not be aser either. Thank you to any time.